Carla here, also known online as the Beer Babe, at Beer Babe.
My name is Mike. I am the Robin to Seacoast Beverage Labs Batman. Can be found on Twitter at @Meredith.
Hey, I'm Norman. I'm known online as the Beer Nut or Real Beer Nut on Twitter.
Hello, this is Sean Jansen from twobeerguys.com.
Brian from Seacoast Beverage Lab, and this is the Seacoast Beverage Lab podcast. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brian from SeacoastBeverageLab.com, and this is the Seacoast Beverage Lab podcast for Wednesday, April 9th, 2014. And we got a good show. No guests today, but we got some good topics to talk about. But I'll kick it off. I am drinking the Mass Rising Double IPL from the good guys over at Jack's Abbey, right there. But I'm drinking it out of a stone-faced glass to get a little meta. There you go. So cheers to both breweries for being awesome. And subbing in for Sean, who is in the Craft Beer Conference, is BM Watts on Twitter.
What's up, everybody? Ben Watts here. BM Watts on Twitter, and check me out at hammerandsaw.films.com. I am drinking Riverwalk's Son of Nomad.
Nice.
Keep that, and I'm drinking it in a nondescript glass because I don't do labels, bitch.
Well, it looks like my face was on it. When you held it up, my face was on it. It was fantastic.
Glad to be here, guys.
All right, Carla, what's happening?
Hey, this is my... I can't get any of those beers in Maine face, because every time you say Jack's Abbey and
this is Mass.
And all of those guys, I'm always like, but we have awesome beer here anyway. Carly here, at Beer Babe on Twitter. I'm actually drinking a Sierra Nevada for reasons I'll explain later. The Summerfest. Yeah, so having fun.
Sweet. Speaking of having fun, just kicking back and relaxed, Mike Meredith.
Good evening, everybody. Mike Meredith, Admiral Meredith on Twitter. And, drinking water for only 10 more days. I'm on the downhill.
Whoop.
Stupidly hard Lent challenge. I will say, though, I caved and had a beer this past weekend. It was non-alcoholic, though. And it was horrible.
I was going to say, how bad was it?
At first, it was like drinking heaven because I hadn't tasted anything like it. And then it settled in, and it tasted like somebody left a Beck's out in the sun, and then bottled it, chilled it, and then had the audacity to hand me a chilled glass with it. You're just...
Okay, so for the record, that's not mediocre beer, folks. That's gross.
Right.
So gross. And everybody was like, "Oh, it's so sad." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm aware of how sad this is. I can't wait for this to be done." So.
Yeah. I mean, geez, wasn't beer invented because the water sucked? So.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Or it didn't suck. It was just unhealthy for you. It wasn't like this water stinks.
Sit around and be like, "Dude, this sucks."
This isn't from a glacier.
Fiji Brewery. What's up, Norm?
Hey, how are ya? Norman Miller. I'm from the Metro West Daily News, and I'm known as Real Beer Nut on Twitter. And tonight I am also enjoying a Jack's Abbey. I'm drinking the Jack's Abbey Berliner Braun.
What?
Their dark version of a Berliner Weiss.
Cool.
A lager version as well.
Wow. A lager dark Berliner Weiss.
Yes, they actually have...
That means something else.
They have the rest of this aging in barrels with fresh cherries, I believe.
Pretty sure the style guideline exists for that.
Yeah.
It's like competing with itself.
It's the BJCP. It's like, oh, I taste this and this, and this head pops up like a
stroke.
I know the BJCP just throws it down and just walks out.
This is awesome. I'm out of here.
We don't exist anymore.
Well, what the heck, Norm? You were gone last. I mean, speaking of Jack's Abbey, may as well talk about it real quick. How was the Battle of the Barrels last week?
Oh, it was fun. Basically, what they did was they split up all the brewery employees, like 16 of them, into 4 different teams, and they were able to pick any Jack's Abbey beer, age it in a bourbon barrel, and spend up to $100 ingredients to do the different beer.
Yeah.
And so it was myself, Jamie McGee from Yankee Brew News, Gary Zen from the Boston Globe, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, the former Mass Brewers Guild, Kristen
Sykes?
Yeah, Kristen Sykes was another judge and last year's winner. It was good. I mean, they got up there, introduced the beers. One of them was basically tasted like salted caramel. It was made with fennel and salt and a bunch of other ingredients. Another one was made with tequila, agave, honey. The winning beer was made with cucumber, green tea, lemon, not lemon, a few other ingredients, all green. And the final one was made with gin botanicals and quinine.
Oh.
And juniper. And basically, there was about 150, 200 people there. The judges, gave their thoughts on each of the beers, made fun of the brewers when they had bad ingredients, and then the People's Choice winner announced. So the winning beer for the judges was the cucumber one, which was brewed by Jack Hendler's team, and the People's Choice, I believe, was the tequila beer.
Nice. Did you get the taste of tequila in that?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Normal.
I told us when I took the first smell and first sip it, like it instantly brought me back to my 30th birthday because just bad memories. Because
Mexico.
the problem when I was younger, I used to drink tequila all the time, but it was always after I was already smashed.
Yeah.
Oh.
The same thing happened on my 30th birthday. There was a kid that just came out of college, came to the party from work, and after about $800 worth of beer at our table, she's like, "Hey, you want to do shots?" And I was like, "I'm not driving or paying."
No.
Yeah. The next morning was bad. It was the only time in my life I've ever thrown up from drinking, and that's a lot of drinking I've done over my years. So.
Hell yes. Well, it's going to happen again once we have our 100th episode because we're doing a 24-hour show, but like a power. Anyway, we'll figure it out when we get there.
That'd be interesting.
It's still a happy year away. I mean, we'll figure something out.
Different
Maybe
beer.
one of our fans could make a power hour clip show or something. Every time Foxy barks, you get a shot of beer.
Falls down.
Every time Norm Street, like we just put it randomly in an episode. But so for those that are watching live, you can hop in the chat at sblpodcast.com. We got BM Watts will be fielding some questions and some comments because we're hoping to have a somewhat interactive show tonight because there's the craft beer conference going on right now in Denver, and there's a lot of new people writing books or adding onto their book, and Norm's one of them. One of the topics we wanted to talk about tonight, the growth of new breweries and the beer they're putting out. And I'll put the link in the chat so the people in the chat can see it. There's a couple in there. But Norm wrote an article basically about that. So why don't you kick it off, Norm? Let's get going on this mediocre beer malarkey.
Well, as you know, I'm doing a second edition of my Beer Lovers New England book. And since my last book came out, over 80 new breweries have opened in New England. So my goal is to try to drink beers from every single one of those breweries because I try to pick a beer lover's pick for each brewery. So I've been going everywhere buying beer, and I started noticing things. A lot of these beers that started just in the last 2 years, boring. I mean, they're not necessarily bad, but just boring, mediocre. They remind me of like when I first started drinking craft beer, when every New England craft beer had pale ale, the brown ale, the amber ale, the English style IPA, and it's just these breweries aren't adding anything. And what they're doing, I mean, some of them are bad. I'm not going to say they're all just mediocre. Some of them are just plain out bad. But it's just there's nothing being added by a lot of these new breweries, and all I see is you go to the store, and particularly if you're a new craft beer drinker, and you grab random beers off the shelf and they all taste exactly the same, why would you keep buying them when they cost twice as much as the regular craft beer you've been drinking all your whole life? If it's going to taste exactly the same, it's not going to keep you from going back to the bad stuff. And my worry is, they talk about in the late 1990s, early 2000s, there was a bubble burst in the craft beer industry because so many people saw dollar signs in front of their eyes and started making mediocre to poor, and it flooded the shelves. And what happened was people rejected these breweries, and a lot of good breweries got caught up in it too, and they went out of business. I don't think people are starting breweries for the same reasons now. I don't think these are a lot of people who's like, oh, I can make tons of money. I think these are a lot of people who truly like craft beer. They've been home brewers forever, and they see all these other home brewers starting their brewery, but it's going to be the same result. They're all doing the same exact beer, and you're flooding the shelves with all the same exact beer, and people are finally going to stop buying it because it's the same exact beer, and I'm afraid that some of the better breweries that might be smaller are going to lose shelf space to these other breweries that aren't that good. And when they start getting hurt, it's going to hurt the good breweries too. And that's the kind of bubble I'm worried about. Not more than just numbers. It's the type of beer that's being brewed.
Well, let's hit it kind of one by one here, because you talked about a bunch of different angles that kind of makes up what a mediocre brewery or mediocre beer on the shelf would be. And let's do kind of like a roundtable question and answer thing. And I'll ask a question if you're watching in the chat. Put your answer in the chat, and we can kind of have this back and forth. But what's ladies first, if I may, Carla? What do we look for in a new brewery as far as a new brewery's opening up? What are your expectations of that brewery?
For me, just because I have to write about it and I have to kind of tell people what's up, it helps when there's some kind of something about them that stands out, and also paired with something consistent and quality. I have a real hard time, and I've said a whole bunch of times, with breweries that I'll have one batch of their beer and I'll really like it, and then I'll run out and tell people it's great, and then the next time they brew that same batch, it's different, and then I look like an idiot for sitting there going, oh, this is the best beer ever, when they can't even keep it consistent between batches. So the consistency is kind of a quality issue more than it is a kind of qualitative, okay, good, mediocre, stand out. But the second half of that is, if I, just as someone who talks about beer, can't, describe what makes me excited about your beer, it doesn't have to be novel. It just has to be something that is high quality. It's either really well made, one particular style, or it's using something local or an interesting ingredient, or it has some kind of a vision to it. If it's just that I made a brown one and a yellow one and a kind of amber color one, there's not much I can say with that. Like it's very difficult for me to kind of communicate kind of the story of the beer. That being said, it is really hard to stand out and be unique among all these 50 other breweries, that open all the time, but if you have a vision as a brewer and a brewery owner, I think that comes out in your beer. I think there's just too many people that say, I'm going to open a brewery, and then they go, oh yeah, maybe I should make an IPA. Like, if
Right.
straight out, there's something missing in the market, or there's something that I'm really good at, and that's what I want to do. Like Jack Savvy makes awesome lagers, for a while we had, Bull Jagger, doing the German-style lager thing. Just, if there's some vision that you have before you start, not after you've already written the business plan and now you have to brew the beer. So, I don't know if that, it's kind of long-winded, but it's kind of, you have to give me something to work with.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right answer, and as you're talking about breweries opening up in already existing high-traffic markets, I'd imagine the pressure of opening a brewery in, say, a Portland, Maine, or Portsmouth, New Hampshire, is the same kind of pressure of a brewery opening up with basic recipes in way up north Maine, or where there's no breweries around. It's just a different kind of pressure. Yeah. So I always kind of go back to Schilling, and they're in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire, but they're doing something that will attract people to go there. Whereas there could be a brewery that opens up in Portsmouth or Portland that open up, but they're not really adding anything to that. So it's not anything exciting. It's just, oh, here's some more beer, but I can get that kind of beer at the Portsmouth Brewery or at Earth Eagle. So what are you doing? Yeah, that kind of way. So it's pressure on sides.
There was like a 3-day stretch that I had pale ale after pale ale after pale ale, and they're all, like, if you put them all in front of me blind, I wouldn't be able to tell which brewery they're from, because the differences were so minuscule. I mean, I still like the old style pale ale. I don't mean to interrupt, but you just mentioned Earth Eagle, and made me think. That's another brewery that did something to stand out. I mean, how many breweries even brew it, let alone how many they brew? And I'd rather have a brewery brew some beers that maybe not the best. I mean, Dogfish Head does that a lot. I mean, Earth Eagle, I'll use them as an example. I'm guessing I might not like the hoghead beer. It just doesn't sound good to me. But they're taking a chance, and sometimes I'd rather have a brewery take a chance and fail trying to make a great beer than a brewery just playing it safe all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I think there's maybe two sides to the mediocre conversation. I want to come back and talk about the other one, but as far as this side of it goes, I agree with you guys. I am somebody that likes something a little different every time. I want like unique flavors. I want daring things. I like to try new stuff. But at the same time, I think there's really something for just getting down to quality. A pale ale doesn't have to include spiced peppercorns or New Zealand hops or anything like that. I think it really just comes down to quality and the beer actually tasting good. You're gonna have 3 pale ales in a row that are gonna taste the same because that's a style and brewers brew to guidelines. But the question is whether they're brewing, consistently every time. Like Carla said, you might get a growler one time and then it tastes different the next time you go back. Are they keeping their equipment clean? All of these things that can factor into it. But I think as long as being mediocre doesn't necessarily mean not making good beer. I think it comes down to, I think you can still make a traditional, maybe plain style beer that doesn't wow your socks off, and it can still be really good as long as the quality is put in there.
Yeah, I dig that.
I guess Mike doesn't like to get.
Mike's like, no thanks. I mean,
I'm
listen.
not railing against pale ales, brown ales. I mean, there's places for them, but when there's so many breweries all at the same time doing a lot of them, if you really look, if you went to Beer Advocate and looked at the list of breweries and just click on the beers they have and look, it's not just new breweries. People are pointing that out. There's a lot of old school breweries that are doing mediocre things too. But my thing was more of now with the craft beer explosion, all these breweries all starting now. But if you look at so many breweries that have started in the last 3 years, two and a half years, you look at the beers they brew, it's almost the same list.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%, Norm. Yeah. There was one that opened relatively close to here, let's say, that a year ago when they sort of announced what they were doing, it was a brown ale and like a winter stout, and I was like, I'm already bored. Like that's not what I'm interested in. But that doesn't mean necessarily that the beer is shitty or mediocre.
No.
Me personally.
No, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't brew any of these beers. Like one of my favorite breweries is Wormtown. Their flagship beer is a pale ale. It's a decent pale ale. I mean, I'll drink it when it's on tap. I don't go out of my way to get it. But when that's all you have to offer and nothing else except for those beers, it's kind of...
Well, let's just back it up because Norm is a big fan of Wormtown because they made a beer named after you.
No, that's not even close to true.
That's just a cherry on top of the already awesome Sunday.
Yeah, because I was going... What happened was I was going to every their event. Anyways, I was going to their events all the time because I used to have tons. So I just pestered Ben, so it had nothing to do with that. And like I said, I don't buy the pale ale. But they also have other options. Like last night I drank the Be Hoppier. They have different styles of beer. And like I said, I don't say you need to do all crazy ingredients. I drink tons of German beers that are fantastic, and they do fantastic stuff with traditional ingredients. And when I'm talking about mediocre, it's not even just that, like I said, it's not just that the beers are boring. It's also a lot of them are just that. They are mediocre even for the style.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
It's not just that they're boring.
Well, that's kind of I don't mean to interrupt.
Obviously, that's a taste thing.
Right.
It's
so
subtle,
it's tasting.
but it's there. And what I worry about, and actually, I'm not going to mention this now. We'll get into it later about consumer palates, but I don't want to talk about that yet.
We'll see. I'll write that down. Later. But BM Watts, we have some good chats going on.
Yeah, Fate 3000 says, as far as we posed the question to the folks in the chat room, what do you look for in a new brewery? And he or she said, number and variety of beers, including different styles. So that's someone who's agreeing with, having like a wide variety when you're going into a new place. You want to see what everybody can do. he said they had she said they had a new brewery open in Omaha that only had one beer on tap and then a variety of guest taps, which is a good point. And then you know, on the side, Carla just made the point where Bissell Brothers in Portland here is doing one beer but doing it
Really well.
but fucking well.
Yeah.
Good call. Good call.
So again, there's maybe a couple sides to that argument. You know, you can put out 6 shit taps, or you know, just kind of focus on doing one thing really well. And this also goes to another problem that we can get into later on, but the premature expansion syndrome, where people, like, you know, after a year, people are loving their beer and then they just expand and fold because they took on too much and then couldn't support it within this industry here. But also in the chat here, a couple other people agreeing that doing something different helps out, different styles, stuff that's not unique. Yeah.
I was gonna say you're talking about expansion. That's kind of a double-sided coin, because there are breweries that expand prematurely, but then there are, and this is more towards Carla's consumer palate thing, it's breweries that open up, and I think we were talking, I think it was Newburyport or something, where they opened up with 3 beers, and then customers after the first week were asking what their next one was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
You know, kind of making them think, well, we just opened up with 3 beers. What the hell what do you want from us? You know? So, but I don't know any other examples of breweries that do that, but
Yeah.
we get
I remember Spencer Brewery, they were getting emails from people before the beer even hit the market. People are asking, what other beers are you going to do? You haven't even tasted the one we released yet.
Yeah, right. So easy peasy. Oh man, Mike, what do you think? Anything?
Well, I'm just thinking in this case though that that brings up an interesting point about impatience in the market too. Like, people don't really, it's a true thing, as we're seeing all around too, is like, to Norm's point, people are emailing asking what their next stuff is going to be before it even hits the market. I mean, like, what does that say to, like, the community of consumers, that we're not even satisfied before we're even satisfied with tasting it? You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, so we're constantly wanting the bigger, better, crazy thing, but I think truly what we're missing here too is that a lot of these people don't understand basics, and like, being able to go crazy and not knowing the basics, that's not going to happen. Like, that's a pipe dream. Like, you know, having these people brew these crazy intense styles with crazy ingredients that cost a lot of money and take a lot of time and that you really can't afford to fuck up, you know, like that in a batch, is not going to happen if they can't master a pale ale, an IPA, or a stout, you know. So
yeah, and I see a lot of that, and there's a lot of parallels to that. Like, if the first time, you know, people go out for sushi, they you know, drown what they're doing in soy sauce and wasabi and, you know, sriracha and whatever. But it takes some time to realize that there are subtleties and, like, really nice flavors that come through in the basic piece of, you know, just a single piece of salmon. You know, you don't have to have all this crazy crap piled on top of it necessarily to appreciate something really good, but to the uneducated, people just go, oh, well, it's just a random piece of fish. Of course it's going to taste meh, whatever. I want this one with all the sprinkly bits on it, you know? Mm-hmm. So there's this tendency to want the more extreme and the more obvious, you know, like, oh, this is really hoppy. This is really high in alcohol. This has chili peppers in it. You know, there's a gravitation towards that when you don't know. You know, so there's also the problem of differentiating between basic styles that are done well and mediocre beer, because there's a difference, and it takes an educated palate to know the difference between beer that is truly mediocre or beer that is just a style that is basic and foundational but brewed really well. Yeah. You know, people always are going for the super extra hopped triple X IPA. They're not even going to know how to appreciate a really well made pale ale. I don't know. Like, I worry about that a lot.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, with Mike's comment, I had a talk after I wrote this blog with a brewer. I'm not going to name because I didn't tell him I was going to talk about it on this. But there was he was basically saying one of the biggest problems he sees with the quality of a lot of the beer starting now is you have a lot of home brewers who've never brewed on anything more than a 5-gallon system.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly starting a brewery, trying to recreate their home brew recipes on much larger systems. Even 1-barrel systems, much bigger than a 5-gallon system.
Yeah.
Let alone when they get funding and get a 5 or 10, 15-barrel system, they just don't know how to scale it up. So they're using the same percentage-wise of ingredients, but it doesn't work that way. So you get a lot of these beers that like they can't recreate the home brew. They never like even did an internship or volunteered at a brewery or never did anything at a professional brewery to get tips, and they just start these breweries and invest tons of money, and they just don't know how to brew on the big system. They might be the best home brewer in the world, but never did it on a real system and just can't figure out how to.
Yeah, so
I think.
Go, Mike, hit it.
I was gonna say, I think a good point that Norm's bringing up too is that a lot of these, and I'm not naming names here, I'm just naming, the situation that we're running into is like, they're brewing on a smaller system, a home system that a lot of them, Jimmy rigged themselves, and that they with like extra parts and just stuff that they buy, and then they go onto a huge system and it's completely different. Another issue that a lot of people aren't willing to talk about because it kind of puts a whole like reins on the parade of the booming business is that a lot of these people and groups that start breweries have never owned businesses before.
Yes.
Yeah, they've never ever managed a group of people. They've never managed a joint account. They've never managed just like incomes. And I know I'm just throwing out business words here, but it means a lot to the longevity of a brewery to know what you're going to do with that massive loan that a bank's going to give you. And the banks are kind of just like, and from what I've been reading about it, the growth in the sector, the banks would be stupid not to throw money at it. Like investors would be stupid not to throw money at it. So it's just kind of like this self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. We're like, holy shit, 10% returns on craft breweries or new breweries? That's awesome. Just throw.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So it's
sorry.
No, go.
It gets back to, that idea of are they making this whole plan for a brewery before they're even deciding what they're going to brew or not having a vision. Like, there's a lot of symptoms of people who are wicked passionate about beer, and I don't fault their passion in beer, but when you don't also have somebody involved or aren't yourself trained to run a business, there's a lot of ways that your beer and your brewery can suffer because of that lack of knowledge. It's simple to think, oh, well, all I have to do is, scale up and it'll be easy. But there's big decisions, about ingredients, about how you're going to market your beer. I've seen a ton of people make huge marketing, like, major. But even so, like, I think that's part of the problem for sure. I totally agree with you that, if you don't have that plan, if you don't have that vision, and if you haven't made those decisions ahead of time, it's going to show up in your beer, whether you're a great brewer or not.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a great example we've seen of somebody with a plan and was able to amend their plan is our good friends at Baxter. They're like, they saw such a huge boom, in their business.
And because we lost Mike, we can quickly...
I do have one quick point about the business side, if you don't mind.
Yeah, business, and then we're going to talk about something else.
Yeah, no, but it was just that it's because
look at Mike's face.
I had to recently do a lot of research on the history of beer in Boston. It's amazing if you look at all the breweries and brew pubs that are in Boston in the 1980s. The only two that survived were run by MBAs. And you need the business side to be able to survive. Sam Adams, Jim Cook, MBA from Harvard. Harpoon. 2 of the 3 had MBAs from Harvard, and the third was running a bank, had an MBA from the University of Chicago. They survived because they knew how to do the business side, and they were able to expand smartly, and were able to know, okay, yeah, this would be great to expand, but we'll be in debt for a really long time, and if we don't sell this enough beer right away, we're screwed.
Right.
And they didn't take those chances, and they survived because of that.
Well, so we're talking about the business side, and then we can kind of scale back to the go back to the brewers part. I was talking to some people out in Denver for the craft beer conference, and they said that this concept of not exactly mediocre beer, but opening without good beer is a huge concern to the Brewers Association. And when Mitch Steele spoke during one of the keynotes today, he said, and I quote, "If you're opening a brewery, please hire someone who knows how to brew beer." So that just it states right there that even the bigger guys are asking that. But what I want to transition to is, and we've got some good Twitter comments as well, so keep them coming. Chad was asking, well, it's not just the smaller breweries that are doing it, it's also the bigger breweries. And when I went to talk to Red Hook about for the book Mike and I are writing, Mediocre Beer, in stores late summer, early fall, Ben was asking, I was asking Ben, what would you want to know about, Red Hook? Because I had some questions down, and he brought up an awesome question, which I had not thought about, is because they're so big and they've been around for 20 years, 30 years as a brewery itself, do they have to kind of change their game plan with all the new breweries coming in and try to adapt to it, or do they feel they've kind of held the status quo on beer where they have already built their fan base? Did I kind of get that right, Ben?
Yeah. It was just like my question was, do you feel the need, because you're so established in the marketplace where people are coming to you anyways? Do you feel that the need is there to create new beers and excite people, to gain more enthusiasm?
Yeah, and I mean, and this is Red Hook's case, that their response was no, because they have award-winning beers like the Longhammer, the ESB, that people have already attached to, and quite frankly, not many people are doing ESBs in town and things like that. But because they've been around for so long, and their beers were already crafty, they're already kind of with the game, and then they do their own things like a pilot batch series every now and then, but those guys don't feel pressured. But then going back, there are some breweries, and we don't need to name names, but there's the problems also with the bigger guys too, who not necessarily haven't adjusted to the new wave of crafty beers, but are still putting out a product that is subpar. What do you guys think about that?
Do you think there's a different market? Do you think there's a different group of people that are drinking the stuff that we are drinking versus the stuff that has been brewed since the 90s and is of, in our opinion, mediocre quality? Because I feel like there's some kind of a nostalgia to it, like this is what they've been drinking their whole adult lives, or there's breweries across the country. There's a couple that have been around forever, and they really haven't changed a damn thing. And it's kind of, is that a different market, or are they gonna have to kind of extend and think about changing? It's kind of the, what do you think of that?
I think you see a lot of with these smaller brew pubs that maybe don't even distribute, but are making beer and just doing things locally, growler only kind of stuff, that have been around for so long that really they're supported mostly by their local community, right? So if they already have the people who are coming there, this is kind of like the Red Hook thing, but on a much smaller scale. If a brew pub that's up in the corner of New Hampshire that's only doing growler fills has people coming in and has established, and they've been around for 10 years, they've established a customer base. I feel like they're not really worried about needing to do anything provocative or to do anything innovative. If they've been around for that long, they've already established themselves there. People are coming to drink their beer, and there's nothing really they need to do to change that.
It may hurt them if they change anything.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because they have these guys like the pale ale, these guys like the ESB or whatever. Right. No reason to go different. I think that's one of the places that I was thinking of in my mind was for the Flying Goose, which has been around since the early '90s. But there, on the flip side, they have 16, 18 taps on at once and keep on like a consistent one. But Rick likes to push the envelope and still do some different things there. But that's a place that's like that, where they don't distribute. They have people coming in local, and they can just they could just do 16 of the same taps, and he could want to shoot himself in the face because it's so boring.
Yeah. But to Carlos, I think there is a different. I know we probably all know Ding on Twitter. One of those things that he does point out is you always, like on Twitter and other social media, Beer Advocate, Rate Beer, you always hear about all these special releases, which sounds like I'm going against what I was talking about earlier. But you never hear about, just the average lineup of beers from breweries. It's like you're skipping the beer middle class. The majority of beer drinkers, even craft beer drinkers, aren't online. You look at Beer Advocate, probably the most popular beer website. They have 1 million members. There's no way 1 million members are buying 7% of the beer market. There's millions of people who don't go on like websites like that, who just like to go to restaurants and grab, oh, I'll have a Harpoon IPA, I'll have a Smutty Nose Finest Kind or something like that. And I think a lot of those beers are drank by people who don't follow what's going on in the craft beer world. They don't go online and like, ooh, Stone's Enjoy By is coming to Maine again. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of people who just drink the beers they like, and that's because they like it. So I think there's a lot of those old-time breweries. A lot of their market is the people who've been drinking beer for years. Like I go to a local liquor store in Fitchburg, who and their beer manager is very good at tracking sales and people who buy beer. And he was saying like the market's shrinking more and more for these like older time New England breweries as more and more. It's not that less people are buying it; just more and more young people are coming in and buying other stuff. So they're actually taking up. They're losing spots because it's not that less people are buying. I'll use Gritty's as an example because that's the one he used. There's not less people buying Gritty McDuff's beer, but there's more people who want Full Proof. There's more people who want Mystic, and there's more people who want such. And these are the younger drinkers. So it's these older drinkers still want the beer, but they're losing out to the more and more younger people who want to drink more different beers, basically.
That's a good point, and I want to do a quick beer timeout because we do have a lot of good chat skis going on. Has anyone changed up their beer since we started?
No, but I need to get another one. So
yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Beer, hashtag beer break.
Podcast. I'm drinking the new Stone Enjoy By 420.
Oh, nice! Just in the nick of time, in the normal time. I got the Little Mayhem Small Stout by Marshall Wolf.
I love Marshall Wolf.
This is a good one. I have not had a dark beer by them. This is awesome. I had their Illegal Alien. It's good. Ben, do you switch it up? Or are you still chugging that growler?
Yeah, still kicking with the Riverwalk.
All right, sweet. So in the chat room, we have a good amount of people. Fate is drinking the brewery Saison Rue. We have Grey Roads Ale drinking Good People Brewing Pale Ale, which sounds good. Alabama beer, I'll take that. And People's Pint, or not People's Pint, Craig Henry is drinking the Good People. Oh, they're saying they're good people out of Birmingham, and he's saying it's good stuff. But yeah, so keep it coming in the chat, skis.
Nice.
I guess might as well switch topics too, and I think Mike's got a good question that we can start off on a different topic here.
Yeah.
Wait. Can I say something real quick?
Oh yeah. So yeah, Carl's not back, so go ahead.
Don't jump off of this. I was flipping back through an old Beer Advocate magazine, and in their little opening thing, the Olsen Brothers, where they talk about they made a great point, which is the does this dress make me look fat syndrome when it comes to mediocrity, which is the lack of willingness that we as consumers have to not say anything to a brewer when they ask us what their beer is like, because it's new, maybe because you're face to face with somebody. You kind of want to you have that impulse to tell them that, yeah, it was really good. That was delicious, even though you may think it was shit. It's just like it's an industry of high fives, as they call it, where just because someone's new on the block, you want to be excited about it. You want to be the first guy that's like, a fan of this brewery in your town. Excuse me. So the impulse is there to like it, whether or not it's actually that good.
Ben, you must watch this show, because that's what we talk about a lot. It's just
although for me, it's more of a bad haircut syndrome than a does this make me look fat? Because does this make me look fat is like a trap question where you have to say that it's good. For me, it's more like when you walk in with a bad haircut. If people like your haircut, they compliment you. If they hate it, they say nothing, and then you're like, oh.
See, I disagree with that.
So it's a bad haircut syndrome. So we don't. I have a bad habit of not talking about the breweries that I'm not impressed with. It's one of those things that I bias what I write about based on the good stuff, and I leave out the bad stuff. I'm not one of those people who gets off on cutting everybody down, but I think that there are avenues that are maybe perhaps less public than my writing, that I can also offer feedback to those brewers and whatever about what's going on. So I don't feel as terrible about it. But I definitely think that's a problem as well. Is that this industry is very self-congratulatory too.
Right, because not saying anything is almost the same as saying that it's good, because you're not. There's no negative feedback to for somebody that they should change up their style.
Normally,
that.
Yeah. Well, no, I was just gonna say, like, I know people who have said bad things about breweries, but because they're local, whenever they go on Untapped or Twitter or something, they'll play up the brewery. It's almost like the negative side is everyone drink local and everything. People won't say anything bad about a local brewery sometimes because, oh, they're local. Well, I want them to succeed. But I always tell people you should champion the beers that should be championed. You shouldn't just champion them just because they're down the street from your house.
So and there's a big difference between you telling a brewery that you like or don't like a beer, and if the brewers actually want to hear that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the ones that want to hear it are the ones you should be sticking behind and championing those beers,
right,
because they actually want to improve. And a perfect example, the glass is empty, but the logo's right on it. Boom. Stoneface out of Newington, New Hampshire. They opened up a couple weeks ago, and I go there, once a week at least, to say hey, and he asks how are the beers doing. I'm like, oh, they're good. He goes, no. What are you tasting? What don't you like? Because everyone I talked to said it's good, and I understand. We try to put out a good product, but if they just say it's good, it doesn't help me improve. And we shouldn't always assume that. Obviously, Pete Beauregard, stellar home brewer in his own right before he started. We shouldn't assume that everyone's gonna be making that A+ beer from the jump. They still want to know how to improve it. So stand by those brewers.
Yeah, but. There's a flip side. There's brewers that won't hear it. I have a friend of mine who's a huge fan of a certain brew pub. Huge. Goes there all the time. Probably the biggest fan of that place that ever existed. And the quality had been going downhill. I mean, everyone noticed it. And because he was concerned, because it was his favorite place, he sent this long, really thought-out email about the beer, just explaining his concern. Just, hey, is there anything going on? I just noticed in the last few months. And the guy basically emailed back dismissing any of the concerns, and it's just that the beers were. I mean, there was a big difference because I had been there several times, and it was the first time I ever been to a brew pub that I ordered beer from another brewery at, because the beers were just so off. And
what do you have of beers on tap? I'll have the other one, the ones that are over there.
Yeah, like I started drinking guest taps, and I never drink guest taps at brew pubs. I go there to a brew pub specifically to drink their beer.
It's weird. I mean, but then you go to those tap houses like Amherst Brewing Company, which they're in a hollowed out Shaw's or Hannaford's, so they have like 30 guest taps along with their 16 beers. So it's crazy.
Well, I think that's cool that they support the other breweries, but
oh yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I mean, in fact, I was just at Millie's in Manchester, New Hampshire, and once they get their beers out in bottles in the stores, they're going to take 3 of their lines off and add 3 New Hampshire beers on tap, which is just like kind of like the old tip of the cap to local.
They're going to be bottling. That's cool.
Yeah, so they've already released bottles. They should be all over the state right now. They're called Stark Brewing Company. That's the name of their distributed beers. But the beers are the Cream Ale and the Millie's Oatmeal Stout, both of which are on tap at Millie's. But it's their way of getting their beer to like far north and all over the state. Wow. So, and it's let me tell you something. Without going on a tangent, one of the best oatmeal stouts I've ever had. And I yes, I wrote the book on it, but I mean, it's still really good. I'm not like I don't sugarcoat it.
Underappreciated brew pub. They do some fantastic beers.
And that goes back to what you're saying about Flying Goose. How they have Millie's has 19 of their own beers on tap and just crazy of their own beer. It's like, where? But I'm looking at these tanks. What the hell is happening? But yeah, let's Mike, because now we've talked about doing the beer. We can come back to it with Carla's little consumer palate, which we kind of touched upon. But big factor in starting a brewery is
the launch phase. So I think it's a good conversation to have right now is to talk about how these new guys coming onto the scene, and also how the old guys can rebrand. But more importantly, how they can launch their beer into the market and not just do the same shit over and over and over again. I don't want to walk into a new brewery and be like, hey, look, we have T-shirts and coasters and 6 IPAs on tap. It's like, okay, that's awesome. What do you got for me? What's different? So, who wants to lead it off?
God, I've been talking all the time.
I mean, for me, if I can jump off of the beer part of it, I get a warm, fuzzy feeling. When the website is creative and not boring and shitty, and
That's my thing, beer buddy.
Whoa, hey, this is Mike's territory. Hey.
So I mean, obviously we're talking about the beer and the quality of beer at launch phase, but other things that I look for besides that are the quality of the website and also how they kind of brand themselves. I think that's kind of important. Are they, is it just like, hey, we make beer, or is it like, I always fall back to Oxbow for a while because they're so creative, so artistic. There's just such a beauty to everything that they put out, as far as the label art, as far as how the website is put together, their logos, the tap room, just things like that. I feel like are other things that draw me in besides the beer itself.
And that goes back to that vision. Like, when you see Oxbow branding, you know it's Oxbow. Like, there's just, it's very consistent. And it doesn't have to be, new and trendy and whatever. It just has to be it has to reflect what the brewery is. And that's challenging. Some people can do that on their own, and some people can't. But one of the big things kind of with that, when you were talking about the websites as well, is how they interact with the people that they're marketing to.
Right.
There are some breweries that have Facebook pages that allow comments from fans. There are others that don't allow comments from fans, or they delete the ones they don't like. There's some that'll answer every single comment you make anywhere. There's some that'll follow you around. So it's just kind of like, what I like about it is seeing who the brewers and the brewery owners are via their presence in the public. Are they coming out to fests? Are they, participating online? Are they sending out press releases with valuable information in them? Or are they writing, Facebook status updates with typos and incorrect times for the events that they're running? If you can tell a lot, about a brewery just from the way that it kind of interacts, with a public space.
I couldn't agree more with you, Carla. Like, honestly, like, telling your story well is just as important as brewing good beer, I think. Like, and the thing is, like, if your story is interesting, of course. I mean, like, we have to look, like, there are some people that go out there and have a story that just, you're like, oh, cool.
And you don't have to be Batman. I mean, like, it doesn't have to be like this long thing. You just have to be clear about who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, let's look back at the success stories, though. Like, honestly, look at the beer that you're drinking right now, Carla, in terms of storytelling. I mean, like, Jim went out there and literally, and we all know the story, he went to every local bar he could find and tried to just get his beer on the shelves, in the people's hands, and he told his story. And we all remember the commercials, and look at it now. I'm not saying that the story was the only factor, but doing it well doesn't hurt.
I do have one big pet peeve we're talking about brewery websites. There's a lot of brewery websites that either don't mention the beer at all or don't give any descriptions at all. They're a brewery. Play up. That's what everyone. That's the most
your
important
product, dude.
That's your product. You see the other thing, like this. The story's great. Don't get me wrong. I want to know the story behind the beer too. I want to know what the beer is. I want to know if the beer is called. It has some strange name. What the hell is it?
Right.
Describe the beer. What's the ABV? What's the style?
And if there's one place online where you can find, if there's one place online you should be able to find information about the beer. It shouldn't be Untapped and Rate Beer and Beer Advocate. It should be where the beer came from.
Yes.
Somewhere.
It's shocking to me when I was going to websites how many breweries didn't even list the beers they have. And the breweries that did, how many of them that did list the breweries don't mention ABV or more than saying such and such, pale ale, such and such, IPA. Give me something.
Oh,
it's
God
brewery.
damn it, Norman. Get off your high horse.
And some breweries like Earth Eagle, that churn through, batches and batches of small beer.
Right.
Like, I understand that. But we're talking about the ones where, like, I should be able to go online and figure out how much, alcohol is in this Sam Summer.
Here we go. Big kind of split where that comes in is and I was in Earth Eagle when I heard this, and it kind of let off the old light bulb in my head. It's this woman came in and said, "Oh, I try to go to your website, but didn't really have that much information." And he's like, "Yeah, we don't have them right now. We're trying to work on it." And I was thinking to myself, why does a brewery need a website when they have Facebook? And then I looked into Facebook more, and awful. But yes, a brewery should have their own website with everything up to date because Facebook doesn't really. You can't unless you are really into
not
Facebook.
The same thing.
Yes, you'll miss things. But Carla, for those things that you're talking about, where Earth Eagle's doing things, sporadically and rapidly, perfect place for it. But for like concrete info, yeah. So for concrete information, boom, go to their website, and there should be a website, and it's got to be good, not like a tiled picture of Norm's face as a background, but some. I mean, look at that face. So how do you say?
That should be the page where they describe Wormtown's Norm. That should just be the background of that page, like an old textured GIF from like the 90s, where you're just like, ugh. Like. Oh
yeah. Yeah.
It surprises me too that there are breweries that exist that don't have a website that rely on a Facebook presence alone. Blue Lobster, which is just crazy. Like
who?
Yeah.
Who? I'm not naming names, Blue Lobster, but it seems like
there's it's not just them either. There's a lot that do not have their own website, or that have a website that hasn't been touched since 1998. And
that's what drives me freaking crazy is when you go on there and you see literally an Angel Fire website, and you're like, holy shit, GeoCities, get the hell out of here.
One New England brewery that still has an Angel Fire website.
I do my GeoCities, but it's all scrolling marquees. Right. But like my blog post, interchange.
Blinking
my cursor actually has like stars and stripes on it, because I thought that would be fun.
Big comment, and then we'll segue out of it from NW Beer Guide in the chat. A brewery should have a web presence first, Facebook second, Twitter last. I agree.
Disagree.
Bring it, Carla.
I think Twitter and Facebook are equal.
I think Twitter and Facebook are equally as important because I'm as connected as probably you can be in Twitter, in beer. So it's one of those things that like there's a whole community of people there that are loving that access, and if you ignore them, you're at this point going to be left out from stuff. I mean, there are breweries that have been around for 20 years that are now just getting a Twitter account, and they're like, oh shit, there's all this stuff happening on here.
I would swap out Facebook. I would swap Facebook and Twitter because of
I would put them on the same level.
Well, I don't know because you can get more
tool for different problems. That's
right.
The thing.
So yes, but you can get instant gratification from getting a message from a brewery from Twitter more so than Facebook because otherwise you're scrolling through your notifications or whatever you're doing.
Right, but if you want to post what's on tap today, you're not going to do that on Twitter. You're going to do it on Facebook.
Yeah,
so
true.
But the problem with Twitter is like not Twitter, Facebook is that they keep changing how things pop up, and if you don't, even if you follow something, it might not come up unless you specifically go to that brewery website, and it becomes a pain. I know a lot of brewers started complaining about it because Facebook started adding, you want to promote your post, $50, and you can like get your post put up on your followers.
Yeah, doesn't work. But Carla, big fan in the chat. I am adjective saying I discover a lot of breweries via Twitter and from from following Carla. So, ew.
Well, I do talk about main breweries a lot, and I talk about the breweries that I like. But it makes it easy when I can hook them up with a little @ I can sit there and go, hey, I'm drinking this. It's great, and people can go check them out directly.
The only problem with Twitter is that once you tweet something, if someone you follow 7,000 people, if someone tweets it, if you're not happen to be looking at Twitter at that time, it's gone. You'll never see it.
But Twitter is a cafe where you choose who's in it and whose conversation you're looking at the time. You walk in, you walk out, you have a nice time while you're there. It's forgetting the buzz of what's going on.
Oh no, I love Twitter, obviously.
But it's one of those things that you can't go back 3 days. Like you can't go back 3 hours. Like it's whatever's happening right then, and it's going to carry that message through. And you have to know that. And I think going back to that original thing we were talking about, you know, if you are a brewer, you might not know anything about Facebook, Twitter, any of that stuff. Get people to help you. You know, get people to at least give you some advice before you dive in and do it half-assed. You know, it's everything that you do. Find a professional that can help you with it, because it's something that is going to matter how you present yourself. You know,
I'd just say Backlash is probably the best startup brewery I ever saw on Twitter. I know they had a huge fan base that built up before they even had their first beer out, because they were fabulous on Twitter. I mean, they responded to everything. They kept people abreast of everything that was going on. I mean, people wanted to try Backlash months before the beer was on the shelf. They did a fantastic job of using Twitter, and I don't even know if they were that active on Facebook at first, but Twitter, they just rocked it. I mean, they just, every single time you're on Twitter, and they interacted with people amazingly well, and they built up a fan base before they even came out.
So that's I mean, Norm, what is it, king of segues we call him, but what's Ben brought up a good point, and then I want to go to Carla's topic, and then we'll wrap it up because we can talk about this for days. Early on, Ben was saying that you kind of have that predetermined notion that you have to like this beer before you even try it, because the brewery has a good presence on social media, and they're out there promoting. But going to Carla's point, are they liking that beer because of the adrenaline that's built up because of this brewery is starting, or is everyone's palate that different if the beer is actually bad? I don't know.
It's hard.
So consumer palates, bit of a different thing, because a lot of the comments in the chat and on Twitter were saying, you know, what's your definition of mediocre? Well, I think there's a difference between everyone's mediocre and beer that actually doesn't taste that good. But to Norm's point, your thing of mediocre was not just in taste, just in
a combination. Don't get me wrong. I like a really good brown ale, a really good pale ale, but it's a combination, really. If you're going to do the style, like the typical styles that have been around for years, do them really well, or do something else. And that's the problem. A lot of these breweries are doing them okay, and they're still doing these styles, and they're just not setting themselves apart at all. That's the only thing. I mean.
So, Carla, what were you talking about consumer palates, and that we can kind of end with here?
So, kind of the angle that I wanted to talk about is that you know, it's hard for somebody who's new in craft beer to differentiate between good and bad beer. You know, they're still trying to figure out what they like. And my question was kind of, is there anything that, you know, that us, you know, craft beer geeks or real craft beer enthusiasts can do to help with the palate education? Because if we can, you know, bring people to the better beer, this is an excellent example of this style. You know, is there anything that we can do to help that, you know, kind of elevate that base level? Because for the new craft beer drinker, I just think it's incredibly difficult to differentiate between something that I just don't like personally versus is poorly made and thus why I don't like it. So I worry about people having a crappy brown ale and going, well, I'm never drinking another dark beer again because they must all taste like crap. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So I worry about the fact that they can't differentiate, and that is going to affect how the market plays out, whether for better or worse.
So once the beer leaves the fermenters and are at the taps of the brew pub, it really is the job of the bartender, the waitress, and whoever's, you know, selling the beer to describe it well, and to be able to describe it just in general. Because I've been to the Portsmouth Brewery many times where they ask for a Bud Light, like, oh no, we don't have that, but we have this, you know, here's this Dirty Blonde or this Summer Weizen, you know, something to try to help them. But then I've been to bars, you know, Thirsty Moose or bars like the Thirsty Moose that are tap houses that don't really know anything about the beer. So if you cannot scare the early consumer and lead them in, it could be good, but yeah, Carla, it does also not help if the beer is bad leaving the place.
Yeah.
Anyone got any other thoughts?
I think an interesting thing is like I understand that we're all enthusiasts. We all like to educate. We all like to have conversations about it too. But like, I would also like to kind of see people self-discover a little bit too. You know, like that. Like try stuff out, and if you like it, you like it. You know, I mean, like that. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be award-winning. It doesn't necessarily have to be the best thing since sliced bread. But I mean, if it fits your palate for that time, that's great. But I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to see that a little bit more. But I do agree that the education factor of actually being able to describe your beer and being able to have it fall accurately within that style every time and be able to accurately describe that style to somebody is incredibly important. You got to know your craft.
Know your boom. If there was a subtitle to this episode.
Yeah. And as a consumer, I mean, I'm guessing a lot of us probably got to start the same way. We just started trying beer after beer. Consumers by themselves also shouldn't give up after they have one bad beer.
Right.
I mean, you have to be willing to experiment. I have a friend of mine hates stouts. You know why he hates stouts? He had a bad stout.
Ooh, one bad stout. But I'll show you one thing.
And he doesn't drink stouts. He drinks everything else, but he won't drink Belgians either because he had a bad Belgian. So he had a bad so he drinks IPAs and stuff like that. And because he had bad ones to start, and he's been drinking beer for years. Yep. You have to. It's just.
I was gonna say, and then there's a whole other topic that like, was it bad because they didn't like it, or wasn't necessarily coached on it? Because I'm not a big sour fan. I mean, yet I don't know, but I'm still trying to figure it out. But as long as I hang around with my wife,
comes down to palate. I mean, for everyone, a beer I might find mediocre. Ben might think it's the best beer in the world, and the beer he thinks is great, I might think it's like crap.
I know some beers.
Perseverance, whatever. Try more than one of a style. I mean, and I hope that kind of encouraging the higher quality ones by buying them and supporting them and kind of like leaving the mediocre ones out will maybe shift us in the direction of there being more quality choices of a specific style to choose from. But until that happens, kind of on a larger scale, just giving people that leverage to say, it's okay if you don't like this stout, why don't you give, another one a try? So, I like that attitude, Norm. It's good attitude.
I mean, that's the one thing we can compliment Norm on is his pretty face and great attitude. Look at that.
Yeah.
So let's go down the line. We've been talking for an hour on basically how a brewery should start up and not necessarily make beer, but in order to have a good brewery, you need to have a brewer. Let's start at the end with Normie. What are you taking away with this? I mean, you wrote the article already that we're talking about basically, but what's your one main theme about kind of bringing that beer to the front and then out and so people are talking about it?
My main thing is brew good beer. Don't just settle for, okay, this is good enough. Try to make it better than good enough. Make it good, no matter what the style. Like I said, I might be bored by a brown ale, but if you're going to make a brown ale, make it really good. Don't make it like, this is kind of good. This is, people will like this. No, make it something that like you're proud that people are drinking. If you're going to make a pale ale or a double IPA or anything, make it a beer that you think you will be proud of instead of just something that's good enough. And that's what the problem I think a lot of the beers that I've been drinking lately is brewers think the beer is good enough instead of going that extra mile instead of good enough, really good, or trying to make it really good.
Bam.
My favorite brewers are the ones for which nothing is good enough. They're cranky because it's never right.
Reminds me of Chris Shea.
Reminds me of Dave Sokolsky.
Yeah, Dave Sokolsky is the kind of the epitome of that. Yeah.
Interesting. Both are from New Hampshire, best state ever. So
it's weird.
Interesting. There's a book about that coming out. Speaking of critical and white T-shirts, Mike, what are your thoughts on the whole topic? Final thoughts. Go.
I think my final thoughts are the honeymoon's over. I think, honestly, not to be kind of a doom and gloom kind of guy, but I think it's time for people to start, putting their money where their mouth is and showing us truly what they can do. And if you can't play, then maybe it's not for everybody. So it's just, I would like to see there be more competition as not in like a formal competition, so to speak, but that's what Norm was saying too. Who can brew the best beer because they want to, not because they're just trying to, fill the register or, race for expansion. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of, it'll be interesting to see what the next, 6 months, year, couple years down the line, bodes for the industry.
Explosion. Mike exits the building. Carla.
So, kind of listening to everybody, I think this has been a really good discussion, kind of teasing this issue apart. But I think it boils down to, for me, as craft beer knowledgeable people, we need to keep supporting those breweries that are brewing the high quality stuff, and we have to also speak up for what's not high quality. But at the same time, those younger, I use loosely, the people who are new to craft beer, we need to do whatever we can to help them to get better educated so that they can do the same. Advocate for that quality, kind of make room for there to be good beer. And what will happen, hopefully, is some natural selection towards high-quality, non-mediocre beer. So I'm hoping that if we can combine in, trying to speak up a little bit more, trying to help out, our new beer geeks a little bit more, and give feedback where appropriate, I think we can go in a positive direction.
Yes.
And then there's Ben. What are your final thoughts on this whole thing?
I think as a personal consumer, I like doing things different. So spicing things up is what I like to see. But at the same time, just listen to your customers. Those are the people who are coming back to purchase your product. Don't say that don't walk away from somebody giving you a comment thinking that that you know better than them just because they're the ones drinking the beer and you're the ones making it, because you never know who you're talking to. It could be somebody with 10 years of homebrew experience that knows what they're doing, and you opened your brewery after 2 years of homebrewing thinking that you're the shit. So I think that's just something important that brewers need to take away, is that your customer base, no matter who they might be or who you think they might be, is still the person who's going to be purchasing your beer and coming back to purchase your beer, whether you like it or not.
Nice. And then I'll just kind of echo. Same for me on everyone else's account. No, what everyone else said. No, but the subjectivity of the whole thing is people are going to like what they like, but it's always worth reaching out to those that kind of see a lot of it. Me, Ben, Carla, Norm, Mike, anyone that that's kind of a connoisseur, not a snob, but are able to tell you that, oh, hey, someone here is doing it kind of off-putting, and here's why, those kind of reasons. We've all been to beer festivals and seen people not give a shit what beer they get in their little sample cup. And quite frankly, there's a lot of breweries that are kind of opening to get those people to drink their beer because they'll drink anything. But I think if each one of us has some people that they can teach and say, here's what good beer tastes like, we could have a nice little craft beer world where we're all drinking great beer, and we're not second session at the beer summit in Boston with Norm getting sloshed because we don't give a crap if it's an imperial stout or a Kolsch, as long as it's filled in this glass. So everyone can just kind of learn to respect the beer, and those that don't will fall by the wayside, just like the breweries that are kind of making the crap beer.
Yeah, so it's almost an argument for oversaturation, because the mediocre ones are going to fall off, and
we want there to be pressure for the mediocre ones to fall off.
Yes, but my original concern was that the mediocre ones will fall out. I'm just worried that some of the good ones will be caught in the landslide.
Go with it. Yeah.
So let's go back and talk. No, I'm kidding. let's we have one more nail to hit in there. No, but I think this is a good discussion. A lot of great chat comments, and again, there's going to be a show notes page just because whatever. But for those that thought the conversation was helpful and insightful, even though Norm was in it, share the link to the YouTube page or sblpodcast.com. Does anyone have anything they want to shout out for this week that's coming up? Carla, anything going on?
Oh my God, so many things going on.
Friggin' Maine, never mind.
Two big announcements in Maine in the last couple days. Well, there go three. One is that Sierra Nevada's Beer Camp Fest thing is coming to Portland. Whoop! Stop number 7, which is awesome.
Nice.
Which is totally awesome. That got announced, I think, today or yesterday, so we're all excited. Secondly, we had this big March Madness beer bracket thing happen for Maine beer. It was really awesome. It was this. They had like an IPA category in one corner and like strong ales in another corner. It's been going on for weeks, and the winner was actually Rising Tide's Main Island Trail Ale, which I don't know if you guys remember, but that was the one they came out with over the summer as a fundraiser for the Main Island Trail Association.
You after the Craft Brewers Conference, Bloggers Conference, didn't you?
I did, actually. I believe I did. Awesome beer. Love that beer. Session also, and they brewed it once, and then they got so much demand they brewed it again. It was announced the other day after it won, which is awesome, that they are Rising Tide's actually going to be canning that, and it's coming back. So I'm super excited to see that one become more available because I think that was a standout beer, and I think
Tall Boys too, right?
So
Tall Boys.
I don't know, but I think so.
August 1st, says in the chat.
Yep. So it's all. I'm excited.
Momo. Or is there anything else going on?
Oh, tons, but that's the biggies.
I mean, that's just the tip of the ice.
Yeah.
Mike, what's going on down your end? Anything crazy besides day 1,000 of being an idiot?
No, dude, I'm just looking to make a big deal about it.
Sorry, May 1st for Main Island Trail Ale. Sorry, not to interrupt. It's not August. It's May.
That's even better.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow.
No, it's just not too much going down. I mean, just excited to see the book hit the shelves this summer, and looking forward to getting back on the scene with some brews in hand, and looking forward to hopefully sharing a pint with everybody very soon.
Most excellent. Carla, anything going on this weekend?
No, but I forgot. I tweeted earlier today that I need a pause button. Too many things are going on at freaking once. We discussed at length the ABV law that was going on. That was basically in Maine. It said, hey, you're not allowed to display ABV on signs and menus, and it was this old arcane law that somebody started enforcing randomly, and we all hated it. And so, long story short, they passed some legislation that makes that go away, and it's effective today. So now you can legally, now in Maine, put the ABV on a menu or a sign in a brewery or a bar. So I'm really kind of psyched because it was like seeing the democratic process in action. That some overzealous dudes started enforcing a law that hadn't been enforced for a long time. People got upset. People were vocal about it. People listened to those people, and they went, hey, Liquor Commission, do you have to enforce this? And they were like, yes, it's on the books. And they went, okay, well, then let's take it off the books. So they went through the motion and actually did it, and I'm just kind of psyched. It's been a quick turnaround, but I'm happy that level heads have prevailed there. And also, our state's also been heavily involved in the whole grain argument, the spent grain thing. So there's been a lot of comments from our folks in our state, speaking up about that issue that's still in front of the FDA. So there's just a lot of this. It's all at the same time.
Make it stop.
Yeah.
Mike, did you get a chance to say everything you wanted to say?
Yes, I absolutely did. I'm laughing at Ben's comment in the chat. I'm sorry.
Ben's running a really good, well-oiled chat room right now.
Yeah.
So we'll get to him. We'll get to him after. But so you're good. Happy weekend, Mike. We'll see you. Okay, bye. We saw Captain America this weekend. So in non-beer related news, check it out because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Norm, what's happening?
No, I just wanted to give a little brief update. I don't know if you had heard, but Slum Brew, Somerville Brewing Company announced last week that they're opening up their own brick and mortar tap room in Somerville. They're going to brew draft-only products there. They're still going to continue contract brewing their bottle beer at Mercury, but they're going to do a 3,500 square foot tap room. Will have capacity of 80 to 120 people. They could do, I can't remember the exact amount of beer, but they're going to do some more esoteric beers there. They're going to have local menu options, like, for example, they're going to have stuff from Tazo chocolate. I don't know how many people know this, but Fluffernutter was invented in Massachusetts.
What?
One of the dishes they're going to have is deconstructed Fluffernutter. They're gonna have like caramel, like bacon popcorn, all these weird cheese plates and everything like that. They're hoping to open about 5 or 6 months from now. It's a really cool space. We're gonna have plenty of parking because it's in basically after 5 they have all the parking, so it's like 60 spots, which is huge in Somerville. They're walking distance from the new Bantam Cider Tap Room and from Tazo Chocolates, so you can almost make like a big swing. You start at Bantam, go to Tazo Chocolate, and end at Slum Brew and get a Porter Square Porter, which is made with Tazo Chocolate, and probably get some Tazo Chocolate to pair with it that'll be available in the tap room. And Kate and Jeff, who are Jeff was a past guest on us.
Yep. And Kate was here. I think Kate was on too. She made a quick, and then we have Beer Buddy Adam.
So they're very excited because they've been there basically since they opened the brewery in 2011. So they're going to supplement the draft that's also already on the market, which should lower the draft price a little too. And you'll be able to get growler fills at the tap room. So good for them. I just wanted to give them a little shout out.
Yeah, I'm psyched. I'm a big fan of their beer. They make some really good stuff. They made a blood orange Hefeweizen, I think, over the summer.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Happy Soul.
So good.
Speaking of so good, Ben, anything going on? You want to give a shout out?
Not too much going forward. Coming up, last week I plugged the shit out of our upcoming documentary at hammerandsawfilms.com, so go check that out. But Brian, you and I had a pretty epic Southern Maine / New Hampshire coast beer trip on Saturday. Started at the top of.
Now we're here.
In Biddeford, hit up Banded Horn, cool facility, great beer, nice folks there. It's in one of the old mills there, so it's all open concept, no walls. You're straight in there. Tap room, brewery, hangout, every place. It's just all in the same spot. Really cool. Hit up Run of the Mill. That was great. When Pigs Fly, Tully's, Earth Eagle. What else? Am I missing anything? It was a nice.
Wow, that's a heck of a little tour.
Yeah, you go and then home with everything we bought, and then just continued to hang out.
Growler it up. Just a couple of kids with growlers.
You guys are just bros being bros.
It was a good. Hey, everyone needs a good bro session. So.
WWE Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Yeah, I remember that like it was Saturday.
Wrestling.
A lot of wrestling stuff, yada yada yada. But I'll give a shout out because we did get a chance to talk to Ian from Man and Horn, and he goes, "You're Norm, right?" I'm like, no, I didn't say that. But, no, he knew who I was, which was good. But I approached him and said, "What's going on?" Their coffee stout, Carla, you said you had.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
That was the one that collaborated with the Speckled Axe for.
Yeah, tasty treats.
I had Elements in Biddeford, which is like it's kind of across down the street. It's a bookstore / bar / cafe, kind of like Cooking Bar. Really good place. If anybody hits up Biddeford, they got some really good stuff on tap. I went there for a book signing event, but it was a very cool place.
Awesome. Oh boy, this week I got nothing going on that's quite beer related. In the next week or so I'll be going to Treehouse because I'm heading back home a couple times in the next couple weeks. So I'll be getting growlers for everybody. You're getting a growler and you're getting a growler. Ben and I went down today to Amesbury Ale House for lunch. I mean, we're just a couple of kids hanging out, but we had some good beers there. Had the Boulder Nitro IPA, which was really good. The Hopstitution from Jack's Abbey was awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm a big Jack's Abbey fan, so it could have been Jack's Abbey, piss water, and I'm like, this is awesome. It's probably a good lager, regardless.
You're promoting mediocre beer, Brian.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, no. Hey, what's happening?
Nothing Jack's Abbey makes us mediocre. So
yeah, so we went over to. Real quick funny story. That will end on this. So Ben and I went to. There's a beer store up the street from Amesbury Ale House. I forget what it's called though. Amesbury Liquors, maybe. And we saw the vanilla framing hammer, so yes, please. Got that. And as we were checking out, he goes, "Oh, you guys look like you." Ben left because he's like, "Bye, I'm out." And then I got the bottle, and he's like, "Oh, hold on a second." I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" He goes, "You guys look like you know beer, so I'll give you something." I'm like, "What's happening here?" Here comes some goodies. he gives the bottle of white birch, and I'm like, oh, nice, okay, thanks, bye. As we were walking out, Ben, punchline, hit it.
They were both year-old bottles of
Hooksett Ale.
like they stuff they couldn't get rid of. They're like, you look like you know beer. We just bought one beer.
All we bought was a framing hammer, so I mean, I appreciate the gesture, but I'm like, mine said, or Ben said May 2013. Mine said March, so I'm like, I'm keeping this beer, and that's a definition of old ale, as I was saying. So
Yeah, that's not a beer that's meant to be aged.
no.
Age that.
So yeah, but yeah, again, I'll end on that note because it is what it
Poured
is.
down an anthill.
We ended up going to Merrimack Liquors after that, and Ben filled up his child's car seat with it. But I I got a couple things. But that's going to do it for episode number 73 of the Secrets Beverage Lab podcast. We have a couple guests lined up, just trying to work out the scheduling for that. But if you guys that are listening or watching have any suggestions, always tweet at one of us or just with the hashtag SBL Podcast, and we'll line them up. We've already had suggestions like Mayflower and some other breweries. But that's all I have. So everybody, good show tonight. Let's raise a glass. And we will see you guys next week. Cheers.
Yes.
Yes.